Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Play, Pause, Rewind. Niles, what episode is this?
100!
Yay.
Happy
We made
100.
it to 100 episodes. Happy 100 episodes. Thank you,
Yay.
anyone who has watched or listened so far. Yeah, we fucking love doing this. We've been doing this since our first recording was January 31st of 2021, the same day I adopted my dog.
Oh my gosh. He's
So.
the podcast dog. He's our little mascot, and
Mhm.
we love him. He's great. But yeah, it's been great. 100 episodes of doing this, and it's great.
Yeah.
We're closing out 2024 on a good episode and a good milestone. 100 is. Do a lot of podcasts make it to 100, Dylan? I don't think so.
No, I believe the overwhelming majority of them do not make it past like 30. So go us.
We're doing it.
Yeah, I think it's like, in terms of content creation, podcasting is like one of the easier things production-wise to do. But I think it's still more work than people realize. And I think a lot of people, when you sit down and then have to keep meeting every week or every other week, are like, maybe not. Never mind.
Yeah, right. It's like, all the other responsibilities of life come up, they get in the way.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's not as easy as some other videos or things that you put out on the interwebs, all these intertubes.
Yeah.
So yeah, great achievement. Go play, pause, rewind. Here's to another 100.
Yay, go us. But as we always do, we will be giving you all a review. And this week we are talking about The Penguin. Not so new anymore. We're a little late to the party, but who cares? Created by Lauren LaFranc and starring Colin Farrell, Kristen Milotti, Rezi Feliz, Deirdre O'Connor, and many more. The Penguin follows Oz Cobb as he attempts to navigate a mob power vacuum in the aftermath of the events of 2022's The Batman. Niles, what are your initial thoughts on The Penguin?
This is definitely one of the best drama series in the entire year, and my camera's starting to spaz out. I love this.
Yeah, I'm seeing that.
We got this little glitch bar at the bottom of the screen.
Oh, no.
So, okay, I think I fixed it.
Oh, there we go.
We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. But yes, The Penguin, the series, it honestly is so gripping, incredibly gripping. It's so fast paced, and it gives us a lot of time to explore the gritty, gnarly underworld of Gotham. It really maintains that same like aesthetic from the movie, which is so cool. And like when you look at it, it feels like you're watching a movie. Like it really does. I feel like, and it just is so consistent with what we've seen before. But it's like it shows us this dark underside of the city that we really haven't seen in this detail before, which is just really cool to explore. Like this gang war that ignites after everything that happens in the Batman. The set design is amazing. The costuming is really cool. I mean, the prosthetics on Colin Farrell alone.
Yeah.
Incredible. Like that guy is walking around with like 40 pounds of makeup for like for like an entire day of shooting. It must be so much work to get into that costume and out of it. It's such a cool show. I was very pleased with this, and I think universally most fans I think are saying like this is like the quality of what the DC universe should be moving forward. And I agree with that, because they've shown that they can do it, and you don't need Batman or a superhero to make a good TV series set in the DC world. It's really remarkable, honestly.
Yeah, and it is interesting that like as the DC universe is kicking off, like we also have this Elseworlds thing here, because the Batman is not supposed to tie in with the rest of the DC stuff. It's its own world, its own thing. I'm glad it gets to exist. I was worried it wouldn't for a while, but yeah, I like leading up to this show, I was admittedly a little skeptical at first. Like, I don't know. A movie having a TV spinoff focusing on one of the characters from the movie is just, in general, that's not something I'm interested in. Especially, I really especially when it's like an ensemble story that like works really really well when everybody's together, and then it's like, oh, now we're getting a spin-off about one of the characters. They're not going to play off of any of the characters you loved seeing them play off of, but they are
Right.
getting their own thing. So I was like, I don't know about this, and then but the trailer came out, it looked great, and the show very quickly got me on board, and I'm now a fan of the idea that this Batman trilogy is like interspersed with a mini series focusing on a villain or a side character in between each of the movies. I think that would
Mm,
be a great franchise, like movie one, series one, movie two, series two, movie three.
yeah.
Call it a day at that. I think that would be really neat. And I hope we get to see that. And I think it's a testament to the quality of the show that while you're watching, at least in the moment, you more or less never ask the question, "Where's Batman?"
Mm-hmm. Oh
Like
yeah.
there are plenty of points in the story where Batman could and maybe should justifiably get involved in what's going on, but
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't. But the drama is so compelling and you're so invested in what's going on that his absence is not felt, you know?
Yeah, you're totally right in that, and it is a fascinating concept too, because it's like they're essentially taking a villain and making him
Hmm.
the protagonist of the
Yeah.
series. And I mean, other shows have done that before. I'm not saying that's anything new, but like this guy has like no redeeming qualities to him by the end of the series. And
Yeah.
like even just starting like once you watch like the first episode, you get like 10 minutes in, you're like, what a piece of shit. Like our main
Yeah.
character, Oswald Cobb, he's just such a scumbag, but
Hmm.
it's such like an intense mob war story, like set in this gritty underworld. Um, it makes for a hell of a good narrative, and you got like the Falcones and the Maronis like competing
Hmm.
against each other here, and then you just have this odd man out rising up trying to find his way through, and the whole series, like I'll admit I'm a Sophia fan. I really wanted to see. I just loved her. Like she was
Yeah.
just I felt that she was a far more compelling character to me than Oz was.
Mm.
That's just me kind of personally. I just feel like just her character, knowing her entire backstory, I'm like, I feel so much more sympathy towards your arc than I do Oz's. Um, but yeah, by the final episode of the show, it's just like I was
We'll talk
just dis-
more in
yeah, I was
spoilers
just
for sure because there's
disgusted by him. Yeah, I was just
yeah.
disgusted by him, but his actions really don't harm the quality of the show. Like even though he's
Hmm.
a villain and he's doing all these shitty things to people, these terrible terrible things, like it's still really captivating. Like you're
Yeah.
invested in it from like the first episode.
Hmm. Yeah, I think Colin Farrell said in the promotion or in one of the behind the scenes videos or something, he was like, I'd be surprised if anybody still liked him by the end of episode. And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll talk about it. But yeah, Colin Farrell though, speaking of him, like he's once again like incredible. He was amazing in his relatively small-ish role in the movie, but he's great
Hmm.
here and completely unrecognizable under the fantastic makeup and prosthetics work. Like it's just it cannot be overstated how amazing that makeup and prosthetics artwork is.
Seriously, and when I first started watching this show, like I just finished watching The Sopranos from start to end
Hmm.
earlier this year, so I was kind of coming at it with like, oh, it's just going to be like The Sopranos, and it really is not. It's like a totally different environment. Like I was like, oh, it's just going to be
Hmm.
Tony Soprano in a higher intensity environment. No, no, no. These are
Yeah.
entirely different characters, and I think one of the things that makes this show so special is that it's not uh, what makes it so different from a lot of other mob stories, mob war kinds of narratives. This one isn't focused on the moral grayness of mob life or the psychology of
Hmm.
mobsters like The Sopranos is. This one is more about like just this ruthless, cutthroat chaos of mob rule, and
Hmm.
I feel like it just really took its time to explore the impacts of corruption, like systemic corruption within governments, like structures, how greed, just like impacts this rudderless society, how it affects everything, and it's not really trying to, I think, like be really profound, like
Mhm.
psychologically or anything like that. I think it's just really just focused on a character like driven story arc and
Yeah.
focusing on fleshing out these characters. Um, and in my in my opinion, there is no comparison between like recent MCU shows and the Penguin. This one is just like such a different caliber because it takes some big swings, some big risks, and
Mhm.
it's not like trying to pull any punches. I think I don't know.
Yeah. I agree. It feels like, and we've reviewed several of the Disney Plus Marvel shows and liked most of them, I would say, to varying degrees, but it feels like on the Marvel side, there was a mandate to create content for Disney Plus, which is why
Hmm.
so many of them were made and why some of them fall flat. Whereas this feels like the idea came first, and then they were like, well,
Mm-hmm.
we could explore this in a TV show, and that's where the TV show came from, rather than being like a corporate mandated project. That's what it feels like to me. Maybe I'm being overly cynical with Marvel, but we've talked about them a lot, and that sort of
Yeah.
is
Well,
the our consensus right now.
yeah, well, and I mean, to your point earlier, like this show doesn't lean into fan service at all. Like it's super original. It doesn't need to lean on the legacy of Batman or any other kinds of like Batman characters. Like we don't ever
Hmm.
see a Poison Ivy or a Selena Kyle or like we get some name drops from time to time, but like they're not part of the show. This
Yeah.
can just stand on its own 2 feet without having to even lean on any of like the DC mysticism or the lore of it all. It's just like yeah, it's its own thing and it's great.
Yeah. Any other non-spoiler thoughts?
I don't think so. I'm ready to
Yeah.
jump in, but yeah, I would say that I would definitely recommend this show
Hmm.
to anybody who really likes crime or superhero shows or anything like that. Like this is a good drama to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say if you haven't watched it yet, I'd definitely recommend it, especially if you liked the tone of the Batman. This
Yeah.
translates that very well into a different type of story. But with that, let's jump into spoilers, and we'll just start with like, I think they did a great job at maintaining the production design and sense of place in Gotham from the movie. Like, going from, in a lot of cases, a higher budget film
Hmm.
production to a TV production. I was kind of worried at first that they'd lose some of that texture, but I don't think they did at all.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, we get to go back to Arkham in this series,
Hmm.
and it looks basically the same, basically how I'd expect,
Hmm.
especially given like what we saw in the Batman. Like it's so similar to it, how they laid it out, and just the environment there. But like, yeah, even like the underground stuff is just
Hmm.
feels so real and lived in. Like these feel like actual environments, and yeah, they did a great job of just making Gotham feel not like Chicago or New York. Like it
Hmm.
feels like its own city here. Even though
Yes.
it kind of does look like New York at certain parts, but like
Yeah.
I don't know, you can't really escape that. I feel like.
Yeah. Well, it's now explicitly, and apparently Gotham always is set in New Jersey, but they specifically call it out as like a city in New Jersey, which makes sense
Ah.
for like a American mob story, right?
Yeah, you're right next door to Tony Soprano down there.
Hmm.
Hey.
Yeah. But I think one thing the show really nails too is the pleasure of watching someone building something that everyone else thought was beyond them. Like Oz and Vic are like building up this massive drug operation in the tunnels, and it's just really fun to watch. There's an underdog energy to the whole thing, and you never really got on board with Oz as a protagonist, but I, for a while, found myself rooting for him because it's just like it's satisfying watching him like claw his way up this power.
Hmm.
And as the we'll talk about it later, but like as the show goes on, you root for him less and less because you increasingly discover he's just a fucking scumbag. But I was coming off of my perception of him from the Batman where like he's pretty funny and he
Hmm.
doesn't do as much like really bad stuff in the Batman because he's not the main guy. He's just like a mid-level gangster trying to like keep his head above water in that.
Yeah.
Um, and then even in this, when he kills Alberto Falcone at the very beginning, it's like
Mm-hmm.
you kind of get it because he paints this like kind of nice image of like the neighborhood friendly gangster who everybody looks to. And then he gets mocked for it. Um, but yeah, it just I don't know. I just really love watching people like build an enterprise in a story like this.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, I liked Oz like at the start for sure.
hmm
Like, and you're totally right because yeah, as the series goes on, I rooted for him less and less. But you start off empathizing with him more or
hmm
sympathizing because of like you understand that like he's been mocked his entire life. He's really struggled his entire life, and he's really, really putting in the work to like take what he thinks is his.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I enjoy how this show, yeah, like to your point, builds something that no one was expecting. Like I think
hmm
Sofia Falcone slash Giganti, she overcomes like all these incredible odds
hmm
of getting out of Arkham and fighting her way to the top of her family in this male dominated, male centric, organized world of crime. It's
hmm
like, yeah, it's like always been such a thing in like any kind of mob or mafia story. Like, just it's just men. There's
Yeah.
like all the women have to like take this other kind of role of just being the housewife, and it's
Yeah. Well, it's like the
it's
final shot of The Godfather, right?
mm-hmm.
Where she's looking at Michael taking that meeting as they close the door on her and she like
Yep,
looks back in.
iconic.
hmm
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's like the whole thing for so long, and just to see her beating all these odds to become like this mob boss is just like it's vindicating. It's so like it's awesome to me. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, please give me more Sophia. She's so cool, in my opinion.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
She's so neat. Um, and to your point about building things like that people didn't even consider, one of my favorite parts of this
hmm
show was in that final episode how like Oz and Vic convinced all the like second in command goons in the smaller
hmm
gangs to like kill their bosses and seize power for themselves. And
Yeah.
I just thought that was so clever, how they did that. And I think
hmm
that underdog move really did reflect Oz's climb to power in the series, and it just really made sense.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think one thing that makes Oz as a protagonist so interesting is at the start, the first couple episodes, and this ties into like elevating the second in command people because it was Vic's idea and he picks that up from Oz, the way Oz talks about crime and like coming up from the
Mm-hmm.
bottom, all this stuff. It's Oz for a while seems like someone he's like a really shady piece of shit, but it seems like if you're in his corner, he's got your back. He's gonna look out for you.
Right.
But
Right.
but the longer the show goes on, the more you realize no, he's just using everybody. Um, None of these people are important to him in the end. They're just stepping stones. And that's what really we'll talk about it more when we talk about the show recontextualizing itself, but it's like that's what really made the shift for me with him. It's like that that view that he espouses to Alberto at the start, it's like that's a fucking sham
Mm-hmm.
because you can't have that image if you operate in the way Oz does. So
Yeah.
he has a dream, but he can never achieve it because it's just not in his character.
Yeah, because he wanted to be like a parade, like people like
Mm-hmm.
celebrating me as like the really good guy in the neighborhood, like the Don boss who's like giving
Yeah.
back to society. And it's like, no, he's never. You want to believe the dream, you want to
Mm-hmm.
believe him, but at the same time, it's like, dude, everyone you've ever worked with, you're just screwing them over the minute you
Mm-hmm.
turn around. Like
Yep.
it's so on the nose, like how he just is so willing to betray people and lie
Yeah.
to them because he's just like he's a snake. He's just finding the quickest way to the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's like you feel for everybody too. Like you feel for the Maronis, you feel for Sophia at the like in the same scene, like when the Maronis capture them, and Oz is just like like you feel for the Maronis at being like, dude, what the fuck is wrong with you? And then
Yeah.
Sophia is just finding out that he was like working behind her back the entire time. It's like devastating.
Yeah, it's absurd. But yeah, he's it's one of the best things about the show is just how shifty he is,
Mm-hmm.
and um like God, that I think it was like the second episode or something like that. They kept like the is that the Falcone compound or the mansion, whatever, and they've got the guy in the basement, who's
Mm-hmm.
like from the other side, and he's gonna be the informant basically to like
Yeah.
rat out Oz. And Oz
Mm-hmm.
like has this elaborate plan that Victor like fucks up because it's an impossible plan.
Uh-huh.
Like, and so he's like, okay, change of plans. I'm gonna stab this guy. He kills him, and then he sneaks the knife onto another guy at the
Yeah.
Falcone meeting. Like, it's incredible. Like,
Uh-huh.
he thinks on his feet so quickly, and he doesn't hesitate to turn on somebody. He's like, okay, this guy is no longer important to me, so I'm gonna kill him, and I'm gonna pin it on
Mm-hmm.
someone else, and then that's gonna get the heat off my back for a little bit. Like, it's
Yeah.
oh, it's such a he's such a scumbag.
He's such a scumbag, and it's like he's such an interesting character because he's trying to rise to the top, but he's also insanely impulsive and does stupid shit, and then has to like fumble his way around to get out. Like he did not have a plan for killing Alberto. He just gets pissed off and kills him, and then has to
Yeah, exactly.
navigate that new shit show that he gave himself.
Yeah, it's like, dude, think like 2 steps ahead for a second there. He can be very impulsive, and I mean, yeah, just all the stuff that he does. Really, yeah, like I was already saying, yeah, there's kind of like the turning point. I think after the third episode, where it's just like
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. He's such a piece of shit in my eyes, and I can't sympathize with him anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The only redeeming qualities that he really has is his devotion to his mom and his mentoring
Mm-hmm.
relationship with Vic, but soon
Yes.
those go away.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's also, I feel like once you get to the end of the show too, I think there's kind of a question of like, well, was he ever really that devoted to his mom? Like, he kind of was, but I think ultimately it was just like a self-serving, like psychological need to just get
Mm-hmm.
his mom to say, "I'm proud of you. You did it. You're my big strong boy." Kind of
Yeah.
deal.
And that's kind of what the showrunners seem to be talking about in the sort of Inside Gotham episodes or whatever they were
Mm,
called. It's like he has this like need from his mom for her love and approval, and it seems more like less like love and more validation seeking.
hmm I think you're right, and the show, it never really paints Oz as a good guy. Like there
No.
are certain moments where he kind of has this image of being a good guy, of like, I'm
Hmm.
bringing jobs back to Gotham, like I'm trying to
Yeah.
help people, and like I want to work with the smaller gangs because the bigger gangs are never going to respect us, and we all need to work
Hmm.
together to come to like to get higher. It's like that's all well and good, but he never lives up to that. He's just gonna like turn on those gangs the first chance he gets, and
Hmm.
because he's a cutthroat gangster with no remorse, and
Yeah.
it's it's incredible.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the strengths of the show too, is that there's a temptation in a lot of these villain focused spin-offs, like the Sony Marvel things, to
Hmm
turn villainous characters into anti-heroes. And this show never falls into that trap. But despite Oz being sympathetic at times, like, and there are moments even later on where I'm like kind of rooting for him, like the Gold Summit, when he has all those
Oh yeah.
people, he like tosses them a beer and they like crack the beer to symbolize that they're in on this plan. I'm like, I want this to succeed. This is very
Yes.
satisfying. I want
Hmm
this coalition to be a thing, but it's not.
yeah.
Oz is never in it for anybody else.
Yeah, he's always just a dog.
Uh-huh.
um and yeah, like what just you talking about other shows, that makes me think of like Peacemaker, which is like another DC show that came
Hmm.
out recently. And when you compare these shows side by side, yeah, like when we first came into Peacemaker, like he's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
We didn't like him because of Suicide Squad, but then the show redeems him over time,
Hmm.
and this show is like the exact opposite, because going into this we knew Oz is a piece of shit, and
Yeah.
he was a piece of shit by the end.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, we
it's
like him
just so great.
less by the end of this show because like he is likable in the Batman.
Hmm
He's like, remember when he's like calling Batman and Gordon like dumb pieces of shit because he's like, "Rata-ta-ta-ta, it's a fucking bat. you're the bat. It's like you're not looking for a rat, you're looking for a bat.
Yeah, like, come on, guys, get it together.
Yeah. And then they're like, what you showing me? Ah.
Yeah.
It's so funny in that. But he's just such scum. It's awesome.
Yeah, he's scum, and he's like, he'll do whatever he can
Mhm.
to get his way, like taking out like the Maronies that
Mhm.
way, like lighting them on fire, like after like kidnapping their son. Like,
Mhm.
what the actual fuck?
Yeah. Yeah. But he's still a great underdog character because he's
He
like
is.
they ride that balance really well, and that's what makes him compelling to watch, I think.
I would agree, definitely. And on the flip side, I think the standout performance for me was
Mhm.
Sophia Falcone, uh, Melody, Krista Melody. She
Mhm.
was a star of the show for me. She um, just was so powerful in her performance. Like, I feel like she had this really great ability to just subtly communicate with like very little facial expressions or changes in her like demeanor and mannerisms.
Mhm.
Like, she just was able to like keep things so suppressed while simultaneously like being like, okay, I'm the boss and this is the way it's gonna go. Like, she just had such a commanding presence throughout the
Yeah.
entire show. Like, so great. And also, I'll say I just love her aesthetic in general. Like,
Mhm.
all the outfits she wore after she got out of Arkham, they were just incredible. They were ah, they took my breath away every time because like they felt so uniquely her and
Mhm.
so stand out ish, Um, but I think they also just represented who she was as a person, but also how she like sought out to change the game and seize
Mhm.
control for herself from like this very male dominated world of crime.
Yeah. And yeah, and like for me, the like she like Oz is always talking about how he wants to like elevate the common people, and they're recruiting the second in commands and all
Mm-hmm.
that. And but again, like as we talked about, he's really just using those people for his own ends, where it feels like to me Sophia is actually walking that walk that Oz is talking. She
Mm-hmm.
does elevate lower level people into her organization and
Yep.
like eliminates all of the old guard and starts fresh as a new like gang. It seems like she is actually operating with a level of integrity that Oz is just not capable of.
Yeah, for real. Well, and yeah, she's introduced as a serial killer in those first two
Mhm.
episodes, like the hangman who killed like 8 women or something like
Right.
that. But then in the fourth episode, we get just like a whole perspective on her time in Arkham, and we
Mhm.
learn that she was framed for those murders and institutionalized by her father. Like, he pulled strings in the
Yep.
background so she could never really get out. So she was there for 10 years. And it's like, after getting that context of how she was devoted to her family to begin with, and then
Mhm.
she was just cast out because she made one mistake,
Yep.
and then just like all this shit was just pinned on her.
Mhm.
It's so infuriating to see that happen to her,
Yeah.
and that just gave me like enough reason to be on her side. I'm like, you've
Mhm.
suffered enough. You've gone through so much shit, and you've lost so much. I just wanted to see her win, even if she does some messed up things, because she's not a great
Mhm.
person either, because she kills her entire family.
Yeah.
But you know, I feel like it's kind of like that like, we kind of talked about this with House of the Dragon, how it's like, yeah, they're committing genocide, but I'm willing to look the other way because I really like her and she has the right to the throne, kind of vibe. And that's kind of how I'm feeling about Sophia right here.
Mhm.
Like, even though she turned her cousin or her niece or whatever into an orphan,
Yeah.
I'm kind of willing to look past those crimes a little bit.
Right. Well, it's like, yeah, I'm on the same page as you with Sophia. Like after that episode where you get her whole backstory, like I'm 100% rooting for her to win in this
Hmm.
conflict because we've already seen Oz betray her. Because I think we get that after the
Yes.
confrontation with the Maronies, right? And it's like not only was she loyal to her family and like framed for everything, but she was just objectively trying to do the right thing. Like she grew up basically a rich socialite benefiting from her dad's crime money and just kind of like the da 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 not gonna,
Hmm.
and then she realizes that like he's killing all these women, including her mom, and tries to do the right thing and then is completely punished by it, and no one in her family sticks up for her. So it's like, fuck them.
Yeah, right. They're all complicit in it,
They're all
you know.
complicit in it. Yeah, except for Alberto, who
Hmm.
is that's so interesting that he's introduced as like this slimy little fucker in the start, but then when we get Sophia's perspective on him in her Arkham days, like he's the only one. He's the
Yeah.
only one who tries to help her. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, he's the only one who tries to help her. Um, and yeah, she just feels like anti-establishment, just like you're kind of
Mhm.
saying. Like the mob, so male dominated. There's so much violence and prejudice against women, and then she's
Mhm.
like flipping the traditional script on its head and saying like, nope, we're gonna make some actual change here. And yeah, just like you're saying, she's walking the walk, and I really enjoyed that about her.
Mhm.
And I think when you compare her arc or her arc and Oz's arc are very different.
Yeah.
But I think it kind of shows how, um, like what I was kind of saying earlier, doesn't matter how egregious or horrendous her acts were, just because I understood her background and her trajectory and all these things, I was able to kind of
Mhm.
justify my sympathy for her in that way.
Yeah.
But she's
Whereas Oz
fantastic.
is like Oz, relatively speaking, like had no reason to behave the way he did based on his backstory. He had like brothers who were like a little bit annoyed by him, but they loved him, and a mom
Yeah.
who loved him and was working really hard to support him. And he just is such a petty little shit.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. He's just a little shithead. Um, I will say one of the bigger things about this series that annoyed me,
Mhm.
because not a lot of this I really loved. The one big issue that I have with this is how Sophia just kind of totally fumbled on like the one
Mhm.
yard line here at the end. Because she was so focused on just like psychologically torturing Oz,
Yeah.
and his mother, like just causing them pain because he had caused her so much pain. And it's like
Mhm.
her motivations for the scene totally make sense, and I understand. You have to kind of have this narrative, this plot element, but like she's like torturing them, and then it gives Oz a chance to get free. Like Sophia won at that point. She was
Yeah.
right there, about to score, and then instead of ending things quickly, she wants to milk her victory because her motivations. But
Yeah.
it's like, for Christ's sake, just put a bullet in his head and take Gotham, take the reins. Like this is yours,
Yeah.
you know.
But she
Uh,
doesn't even want it at that point. Remember, she wants to
that's
walk.
true. That's
But also,
true.
what it feels like to me. It feels very much like a tragic Greek character, like a Greek
Yes.
character. Like because what always happens in those Greek tragedies, it's like they win and then they just go one bit too far, and
Hmm.
then gods smite them down or something. It's like it just feels so much like that. Like you had him, you could have, you had
It was
everything.
there. It was
It was
there.
there.
You could
But
have
but
done
the
it.
only way I think the only way in her mind to really beat him was to take the thing he valued most, which was his mother's approval, and rip that away from him. And she in that sense, I guess she wins because
Hmm.
she gets what she wants. Um
Yeah, that's true.
and before we move on and forget, just because we didn't put any notes on it, Eve and her
Oh
girls.
yes, yes.
Fascinating bunch of characters. I love the scene between Sophia and Eve where they
Hmm.
come to that understanding, and Eve betrays Oz because he betrayed her. Like it was
Yeah,
her girls who were killed by the hangman, and Oz is the reason that Falcone was never brought to justice for that. He knew, and he lied
yeah.
to her about it for years. And yeah, but I love the dynamic between her and Oz too. And when Sophia's like, "Well, he pays you, so it's obviously not like about love, and then Eve is just like, things are more complicated than that. Like, you don't get it. It's
Hmm.
a different.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, obviously, I think at the end of the day, she's really just trying to get by and live her life
Mm-hmm.
and protect the people in her life who are important to her. But yeah,
Yeah.
like it's her and Oz obviously have like a special kind of relationship,
Mm-hmm.
but it still feels transactional, like
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they were. She was a really cool character. I really liked her, and how they kind of like integrated her into the story. It was neat to see that perspective.
Yeah. She was like part of Oz's reliable entourage of people. Like, it's her and her girls who distribute the drugs at the club when he and Sophia are pitching it to the other gang.
Hmm.
And it's just, I don't know, it was just really satisfying to watch all those relationships play out and then come apart because of
Yeah,
selfishness.
exactly. Yeah. Um, and I'll also say, because we were just talking about Sophia,
Hmm.
one of the last things I'll say about her is, um, I really want to see more of her, and hopefully we'll
Hmm.
see her again, um, in whatever comes next, whether that's the next Batman or the next series, whatever. I've enjoyed the tease at the end of like
Yeah.
Selena, the letter from Selena Kyle,
Hmm.
which I feel like just implies that she's going to help her break out of Arkham, uh, which was kind of a lone bright spot in the
Yeah.
finale.
I agree. Yeah, let's talk about the Maronis for a little bit. The
What a bunch of suckers.
they don't fare very well in this.
Yeah, they really should have been better and
Hmm.
not have died so easily and lost. But yeah, they just kind of really bought into Oz's shtick.
Hmm.
The only smart one among them was Nadia Maroney. I feel like
Hmm.
this actress. I should have looked up how to pronounce her name because I am not going to be able to pronounce this. But
Yep.
uh,
Um, yeah, she's awesome.
she's awesome.
I always get so excited whenever she turns up in something because she has such a unique voice. She's actually in Arcane as well in the first season. Um,
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah, but
she's got such a unique voice. Shorey Agash Agdashlu.
yeah,
That's the best I'm
she's
going
an
to get it.
Iranian
I'm sorry.
actress and she's brilliant. She's so good in
Yeah,
like everything.
she's got such an interesting voice. I loved her. Like anything she does, it's
Mhm.
just like, okay, say some more lines, please. I could listen to like a whole audiobook by her. But
Yeah.
she's like, she was the one who was like honestly thinking correctly. She's like, this guy's a
Hmm.
dog. We can't trust him. Like,
Yeah.
do not trust this man. But they kept just kind of ignoring her advice in a way, or being
Hmm.
like, yeah, we can control him still. But she was really cool. But I really also thought it was hilarious how Salvatore Moroni, in the climactic battle, the fist fight
Hmm.
between him and Oz, he just has a heart attack and
Yeah.
dies.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
like it's. I don't think I've ever seen that on screen before, and it's so funny because I
Hmm.
think it's like it steals this victory away from Oz in a way because
Hmm.
it's like, oh, I wanted to beat him in a fair fight, but then he just shoots him anyways after he dies. Like he takes his
Yeah,
anger out
he
that way.
tries
I
to
feel like
rewrite the narrative of what happened.
exactly, and but like I think it's pretty symbolic of the mob war too, of like
Hmm.
how the mob war is kind of stagnated and the sudden gap appears, and it's just like, boom, here it is. Like you don't need to do anything. Like he's dead. You can
Yeah.
rise now and seize
Hmm.
control. But that was just so
Yeah.
funny to me.
And I'm gonna come back to this in a second, but before I forget that, like one thing that in the inside the episodes they were talking about that I thought was really interesting with the Maronis is that, like Salvatore Maroni is a very Italian name, and obviously it was an Italian mob organization, but apparently, I don't know if it was the casting for Nadia that played a role in this, or they decided in the direction first, but they thought it would be really cool. It's like, oh, Salvatore fell in love with this Iranian woman, and then over time, after that marriage, the Maroni family became more of an Iranian style mob family rather
Mm.
than
Mm-hmm.
Italian. And I just thought it was like, oh, that's kind of unique for this type of story. It's always so like Italian mob focused in these type of things, but with Salvatore dying too and the gang war stagnating, something I haven't read a ton of Batman comics, only a couple, but from what I've come to here, it's like the mob stuff in the Batman mythos. It's like once Batman comes on the scene and the costume villains start taking center stage as well, the role and influence of the mobs in Gotham starts to diminish. And
Hmm.
this show sort of plays on that in a lot of ways. It's like we are seeing the last gasp of the two main mob families in Gotham.
Yeah.
And now the only one remaining is Oz, the Penguin. And
Yeah.
he's more of a comic, a comic book villain. And so the old days of the mob are gone now.
Yeah. That is an interesting point. Well, I really like on the Maronis too. I wish that we got a little bit more of Salvatore's background,
Mm-hmm.
because I think he's an interesting character, and I really like the dynamic that develops between him and Sophia in the latter
Mm-hmm.
part of the season, like the second half, because they start to team up, and they're like,
Yeah.
okay, this is how we're going to get rid of Oz and seize control, and no more of this feud between families. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
it could have, if we had spent even just a little bit more time on him and his background, I think that would given more emotional weight to his family's demise, because like
Mm-hmm.
I think we spend so much time on the Falcones. It's like, yeah, the Maronis are there, but we don't really know much about the Maronis besides the fact that they're the Maronis. That's kind of it. And the Falcones are
Yeah.
there too. Like we get more time spent on like developing out these relationships. So one
Yeah.
small critique.
I do really I love Clancy Brown's performance as Salvatore Maroni. It's an incredibly different take than the Maroni we see in The Dark Knight, obviously, who's a more like
Right.
slimy, skinny guy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, that which I like that one too. I like that character a lot when Batman drops him off the fucking balcony and breaks his ankles.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I loved the almost like found father daughter dynamic between Sal and Sophia. And I love when he's like cooking with the wine. And it's obviously a very old, expensive bottle of wine because Sophia just sits down and is like, I can't believe you opened that.
Yeah. He's like, I don't care.
Yes. But yeah, they have a really interesting dynamic, and it's tragic that, what happens to them. Not that either of them are good people necessarily, but still. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, and like at the end of the day, if they won in the end, nothing really would have changed in Gotham. I
yeah,
feel
probably not.
um, like the old guard would still be kind of in place, and things wouldn't have really changed. Not saying that Oz
Mm-hmm.
changed much after he won in the end,
Yeah.
but it's like at the end of the day, organized crime is still going to be there. It's still going to have a big
Mm-hmm.
role on things, and when you're like, which one would have been better? It's like it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah. But let's talk about Oz's mother, Frances Cobb. What a
Mm.
fascinating character.
So because I came off of the Sopranos rewatch, or not rewatch, just watching it
Mm-hmm.
all the way through, she reminded me a lot of Livia Soprano, which is Tony Soprano's mom. She is just this cold-hearted bitch, like all the time. Like she's this old woman who's just like she's widowed,
Mm-hmm.
like Livia specifically,
Yeah.
in The Sopranos, and she never had anything nice to say. She was always just like so rude and unpleasant with everybody. Like I just loved her because of how like unfiltered she was and how weird
Mm-hmm.
she was. She's got this great line where she just repeats it multiple times. She's like, "I wish the Lord would take me now." So Francis reminded me a lot of Olivia. Obviously, they're
Mm-hmm.
very different, and just Francis had similar energy to her, but in
Okay.
a different way because she was just always so kind of like um, unpleasant and
Mm-hmm.
just impossible to be around.
Yeah, but she's fascinating too because like she has dementia, obviously, or
Hmm.
Alzheimer's or something. But she very clearly, even when we get to see the younger version of her, we learn this for sure. But like she seems like a very personally powerful and independent person whose agency was robbed from her by this disease, and now the person taking care of her killed her other sons and she hates him, but
Hmm.
it's like she needs him at the same time. And it's such a fascinating dynamic to watch play.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful. And she gave actress she gave a great performance here, and the
Deidre
character
O'Connor. Yeah.
felt like she was suffering for so
Mm-hmm.
long, like that she had been burdened with so much emotional guilt, so much responsibility
Yep.
for so long. And in the end, she's by no means a good person, but like
Mm-hmm.
it's a pretty tragic ending for her as a character, because she's kind
Mm-hmm.
of stuck in this vegetative state,
Yep.
forced to stare out the window at Gotham, at a world she can never experience. She got the penthouse that she
Mm-hmm.
wanted, that Oz promised her, but she's a prisoner rather than a resident. And
Yep.
it's just devastating to see that happen. Like Oz is committing elder abuse.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's directly in opposition to to her wishes. She tells him directly she does not want to be in a vegetative state, and to pull
Yeah.
the plug, she like, and he refuses because
Yeah.
her wishes don't matter. He needs her there to keep his promise about the penthouse and have her
Hmm.
approval, and she can't disapprove of anything anymore because she can't speak. So
Yeah.
it's perfect for him. He can imagine whatever the fuck he wants, and he has Eve come over and dress up as his mom at the end.
Yeah, and say all
Which
these
is,
nice words to him, like I'm so
mm-hmm.
proud of you. Like it's
Yep.
oh yeah, you're so right about him just needing the approval from his mom, and not so much like I love my mom. It's like he's just got this deep psychological need to be
Yep.
acknowledged and vindicated.
And speaking of Francis and Oz, like we should say the performers who play the younger versions of them are also brilliant, and
Yeah.
like they do such a great job. But the show in general, it's one thing I found so engaging was how great it is at recontextualizing itself to you as the viewer, right? Like Sophia is introduced as this dangerous and unhinged, erratic wild card, the hangman. She says like in a really scary way, like I've been rehabilitated in Arkham, and like it's like oh, but then the show reveals her backstory, and like she was innocent of fucking everything and gets
Yeah.
framed, and it totally changes your understanding of her and the way she is, and I think it just changes the way you watch the show and is really what starts to paint Oz in a more fully villainous light, you know?
Seriously, because yeah, when you're in those first few episodes, it's like it feels like Oz against the world,
Mm-hmm.
Oz against the establishment, and it's like he's the underdog. You're rooting for him, and Sophia is just another Falcone who's just more of the same. But then, yeah, after that point when you understand her backstory and the
Mm-hmm.
shit that she went through in Arkham,
Yeah.
total reversal. Now Sophia is
Mm-hmm.
my focal point. She's the person I'm rooting for. But yeah, it's so great at recontextualizing itself. You're absolutely right. Like the when we learn about we see this flashback scene of Frances getting dressed up to take
Mm-hmm.
Oz out to the
Yeah.
club, um, and at first, yeah, it feels like she's moving on
Yeah.
after losing her two sons. But then when we get the other flashback, it recontextualizes it as
Mm-hmm.
she's taking her son out for one last fun night before he
Yes.
gets killed by
Yeah.
that guy.
And it changes the context of her dressing up too, right? It's like in most stories when you see that, it's like, oh, they're finally, well enough to
Hmm.
make themselves look nice for a night out. We're going out on the town. We're gonna move forward with our lives. It's like no, she's getting dressed up because she's ready to get rid of him.
Hmm.
Celebrating getting rid of him.
Yeah, it's
Oh.
like yeah. At first, you think it's like a new beginning, a new chapter for
Mm-hmm.
them together as a family. But then when you see it the next time, like oh, it's a new beginning for her, getting him out of her
Yeah.
life. And
And then yeah, and then like closely entwined with that, obviously the reveal of Oz killing his brothers. Like the entire show, he's talking about like, yeah, my brothers, and I always used to do this with my brothers, but they died when we were young. And then turns out it's like, oh, you locked them in the fucking sewers, and
yeah,
you had oh god, it keeps showing how he has every opportunity
yeah,
to save them, and then he just doesn't. He just lets them die.
yeah. He lies to his mom when he comes home. He's like, oh, they went to a movie. They'll be back soon. And then the rain doesn't let up, and you just see him keep looking out the window, thinking about
Mm-hmm.
it. Like, I think that was definitely a big moment where just all the I just couldn't like the Penguin anymore. He was he he's just a selfish, impulsive prick
Mm-hmm.
who killed his brothers when he was a kid.
Yeah. For like no reason. They just like
Yeah.
fuck with him very lightly, right? Um
Hmm.
and it's just mean.
Yeah,
But
because he was jealous of the attention. He wanted all the attention from his mom, and he couldn't do the same things that his brothers did. And they kind of teased him, but
mhm.
they his older brother was looking out for him.
Yeah.
Still, he
Yeah.
was a good older brother, all things considered. From all that we saw in the show, he
Mhm.
seemed like an okay dude. And
Yeah.
that Oswald.
Yeah, but we need to talk about the relationship between Oz and Victor. I think this is the beating heart of the show in a lot of ways. Victor is basically the main key as to why all of this works. Um,
Hmm.
Also, that it's a fun thing that people notice right away is the way Oz meets Victor is he's trying to steal like the rims off of his car. That is the way
Hmm.
Batman meets the Jason Todd Robin, and that's the second Robin. And
Oh, okay.
the most famous story about the Jason Todd Robin is Death in the Family, which is when the Joker beats him to death.
Right. Yeah. That is brutal.
Yeah.
That is. Yeah. They had a very interesting relationship because yeah, Oz is
Hmm.
just mentoring Vic. You can see that Vic is like we learn a lot about him over the course of this series. You know, he lost his entire family
Hmm. In the flooding
um,
from the Batman.
in the flooding from the Batman. So his hardworking family who followed all the rules, did everything right, they were killed. And
Hmm.
so I think that kind of gave him the message of like, it doesn't matter how hard you work, like anything could still happen to you. But
Hmm.
you know, he's clearly conflicted as he's going into this, but over time you can see him start to learn a lot from Oz, and
Yep.
it does make you start to root for both of them. And I think it is one of those redeeming qualities of Oz of like you can see how he took pity on Vic because he saw
Hmm.
part of himself in Victor, like the stutter. He's it's similar to his disfigured foot and his limp. Like
Yep.
you can see that he needs a step up in this world. He needs someone to help him. And at first
Right.
it kind of starts off kind of in a hostage relationship
Yeah.
of like, you do this and you're complicit with me, so you
Hmm.
need to keep going along with it. But then it builds into this more trusting mentorship dynamic,
Hmm.
and it's very powerful and heartbreaking.
Yeah, and it like for a while until it doesn't very. There's a big twist, you know. But for a while, it really Oz's mentoring of Vic lets you root for him through a lot of his cruel shit that he's doing elsewhere because you're invested in their dynamic, and he is sticking up for Victor and trying to elevate him and like teach him the ways of this world. Like and when they're at the fancy restaurant and he's
Hmm.
studying through his order and the waiter like says, "Oh, you want this?" and then Oz like, "Don't do that." He was speaking. Let him finish. It's like that's a very kind thing to do, right?
Yes,
He's like, "Oh,
absolutely.
what you have to say is important. You can take the time you need. Don't let other people interrupt you. You
Yeah.
like it's like because of the like kindred spirit nature of it, like you kind of believe that Oz just wants the best for this kid for a while. And then you have that moment where Victor almost leaves town to go with that girl that he likes and move
Hmm.
and start a new life, and he chooses Oz. He chooses this guy that he now trusts, and he commits to this life of crime. You see him having to kill that bully that he
Yeah.
had to deal with, and then the like really, I love that moment afterward where Oz realizes he killed him, and it's this really, it's like a touching mentorship moment on one hand, but also really fucked up on the other, where he's just like, it gets easier,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Right.
it's also ultimately foreshadowing. But it's like Victor is such a great character, and he really steps up and is the reason for Oz's success.
Oh yeah,
The day.
yeah. Without Victor there, like Oz would have died at the hands of the Maronis outside of the club in episode
Mm-hmm.
3. Like there's so many moments where it's like Victor came in clutch and actually
Yep.
helped Oz succeed. Like he was
Mm-hmm.
the right hand man um, for Oz, and it just makes his death that much more heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's devastating.
Yeah, yeah. So like at the end of the series, they won. They did everything. Sophia's in cuffs, handcuffs,
Mm-hmm.
and they're drinking down by the river. And then Oz just strangles him to death.
Yep.
He's like, "You can't come with me, kid." And it is so sad to see this death because he was my second favorite character. I wanted Victor to win. Like
Yeah.
after similarly to Sophia, he had suffered so much. He had done so much
Mm-hmm.
to survive and to make ends meet. He had struggled, and I wanted to see him have like all the love and gratification that he deserved, especially when he had put in so much work for Oz. Um, it's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
It's truly heartbreaking. But that said, he kind of knew what he was getting into after
Yeah.
he had that chance to like escape, and he makes me think of all the guys from The Sopranos, all these
Mm-hmm.
great characters who got seduced by the mob world, by organized crime, and
Mm-hmm.
then it became their undoing. Like there's so many characters who like just go in, head to the like balls deep. Jackie Jr. He's God. Jackie Jr. was like a kind of a similar character to Victor in a way because he was
Okay.
I'm gonna go to college and I'm gonna get a degree, but then he just like gets lured back to
Mm.
the mob world, and it ends up being his undoing. And Victor did have his chance to escape, but he stayed because he wanted
Mm-hmm.
to help Oz and kind of become like him, and
Yeah.
he saw something there. But so I'm not saying he brought it on himself. It's just like, dude, you could have gotten out.
Yeah. Well, and it's like just talking about it now made me realize. Remember what we talked about in our episode on the Northman? When Amleth and the girl that he is in love with, Anya Taylor-Joy's character, they're like sailing away, and then
Right.
he decides to go back for revenge. What we talked about then is like in a story when a character has the out and they're on their way out, but they choose to go back for revenge or whatever. They know you don't survive that. That was your moment. That was your opportunity, and you're right. He had that moment in episode 3, and he chose not to take it. And it like, but his death obviously erases any goodwill towards Oz that
Mm-hmm.
they have survived up till this point. like, like, yeah, he's already the worst. But there was this one redeeming
Yes.
element left of him, and I thought maybe there is one. He tricked me. He tricked me up until the very end. I thought maybe
Yep.
there's one loyal bone in his body, and that because I've thought the show would go one of two ways. Either Victor dies, I wasn't sure in which way, or he survives and is like the Penguin's henchman in the Batman 2. I thought that would have been fun as well. I also thought it was possible, like if Victor died, he dies at the hands of Sophia or one of Oz's enemies,
Mm-hmm.
and that causes Oz to be more evil than he was in the Batman 1. Nope.
Nope, not here. They did not make that decision. They said he's gonna kill his right hand man.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, yeah, we already knew that he killed his brothers. So I was like, he's irredeemable. But then he
Yeah.
does this, and he's even more irredeemable. This guy is such a scumbag. Oh, he's so bad. He's such a despicable villain at this point. That's God. Poor Victor.
Yeah.
Poor Victor.
I think the solace we'll get from this eventually this is a theory for the Batman 2. I think it will ultimately be him killing Victor will ultimately be the reason for his eventual downfall. Vic was like totally loyal to him, and his outside of the box thinking is the entire reason Oz survives and wins. And so now
Definitely.
Oz is without that. And I think also Victor was the one who recruited all of these second in command guys, the up and comers, once they realize what happened to him, I think Oz's criminal empire will begin to crumble. And I also am wondering, because Oz did not do an excellent job with that crime scene. So I wonder, and I wouldn't be surprised if at the beginning of Batman 2, we see the Batman investigating the disappearance of Victor Aguilar. And that puts him, because this iteration of the Batman is leaning very heavily into the detective side of things. So
Yeah.
that is the mystery that kicks off the next movie.
I could see that. That could be a very interesting way to take things. But I think you're totally right that there's no one left who's like definitively loyal to him. Like all the people
Mhm.
working for him are just looking out for their best interests. He no longer has someone who's got his back
Yeah.
because they like him. People have his back up to a point, and that point is when someone else is going to pay me more money or I have an
Mhm.
opportunity to take over the title myself. So
Yeah.
I think he shot himself in the other foot.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I love the way the Batman's presence is absent the entire show, but I love how at the very end, what is it, Eve said? Nothing standing in your way now or something like that, and then we go outside and the bat signal comes on. It's like, oh, it's perfect.
Beautiful.
It's the perfect way to like not ground it, because it's the opposite of grounding it. It's like it's reminding you of the world you're in. It's not just a crime drama. It's not just a mob show. It's a Batman show, and he's coming. And
Yeah.
and especially if my theory is right, where Victor's death is what Batman is being called to look into. It's so poetic. It's right.
I could definitely see that, but I think like there's a part of me that's like that Victor's disappearance or murder, it's like too small of a crime for them to be like to call in the Batman. I feel like it's more just like the organized crime world has changed and we need you to like dig into it.
Maybe,
like,
yeah.
But I see what you mean, and like it would be vindicating to have Batman Robert Pattinson come in and just be like, "No, I'm here to get vengeance for Victor Aguilar."
Yeah, well, I think it'll be like maybe I don't know. I feel like Sophia will tie into it as well. I think Batman and Sophia having a face to face in the sequel would be very interesting. But I don't think it's going to be like centered around Victor. I think that would just be like it'll be part of the mystery that Batman is working through, which I think would be just really, really intriguing. But yeah, that's any final thoughts on the Penguin?
I don't think so, but it's so fantastic. You guys got to check it out if you have not already checked it out. But what about you? Anything else?
No, I think it was really great. That being said, I don't think I want a Penguin season 2 after the Batman.
No, me neither.
I would like to see this format applied to a different character. I know Barry Keoghan is in like a deleted scene of the first Batman as the Joker. I kind of don't need the Joker in this franchise.
Me neither.
Which is a weird thing to say about Batman, but it's like, let's focus on other stuff for once.
Yeah.
We'll get the Joker again in a little bit.
There's so many other characters they could bring in. Poison Ivy, Mr. Freeze.
Yeah.
So they got options. But yeah, let's move on to our last segment, or I guess second to last. We'll see.
Yeah.
But other stuff, we're going to talk about some stuff that we've been reading, watching, doing lately. Dylan, what have you been up to, sir?
All right. So over the Thanksgiving holiday, I did a rewatch of The Holdovers, which is a brilliant winter movie. Came out last year. We saw it in theaters, and then remember the last 10 minutes of the movie, those two guys came up and were like, "These are our seats."
Yeah.
The fuck are you talking about? They're 10. No.
There's 10 minutes left. Go back down the stairs and exit the theater.
It's like you're either early or in the wrong room. Go away.
Yeah. Yeah, such a good movie. I need to rewatch that.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. And I'm continuing to read the Witcher Sword of Destiny short stories book. Saw the Wicked movie with my family when they were here.
Nice.
It's good. It's good. Like Wicked is good. Wicked's a great play. The main problems with the movie are so many scenes are so desaturated compared to what, in
Hmm.
my opinion, they should be, and also lots of like really aggressive backlighting in
Hmm.
interior scenes, which obscures the actors' faces. It's just like weird directing decisions for the
Okay,
most
that's
part. But
interesting.
like the performances are all really really good. The production design is great. It's just the approach to color and light just doesn't really work.
Hmm.
And there's one scene where they like really use color in an interesting and fun way, and it's like, oh, it would have been cool if the rest of the movie was like this. But um,
Yeah. Oh
yeah.
well.
Also, Superman and Lois. I finished it. It's done, and with it ends the era of superhero TV on the CW. That was
Oh my gosh.
the final one. The Arrowverse has come to an end after many, many, many years. I used to be very invested in this universe, as you know. I dropped off
Hmm.
over time as I think the quality went down significantly on several
Yeah. Yeah.
shows. But
But
also,
Superman and Lois was good though.
Superman and Lois was great from start to finish, and it's amazing that the fourth season was as good as it was because their budget was like slashed significantly,
Hmm.
and all but four of the main actors were lost their series regular status. They were cut down to just recurring, but everyone in the show still came back and played
Cool.
roles in the season. Like there were some weird moments where it's like, well, it's kind of weird that these two characters are not going to interact at all this episode, but it's because they were recurring cast, not series regulars, so they could only be in so many episodes because they get a lower
Hmm.
pay rate and they get a lower episode count. But they made it work, and it was a really satisfying ending. Made me cry at the end. It was a really
Oh,
cool way to end the story.
wonderful.
Um, yeah. Also, Dan to Dan, continuing with that. It's a very fun show. I like it. And I start
Hmm.
watching Delicious in Dungeon as well, another
Hmm.
anime. It's like there's this big dungeon that adventurers go into. It's like a massive multi-biome, multi-room dungeon, and it's like the problem they run into in the opening scene is like they're just too hungry, and so they lose a really important fight, and so they come across this guy who's like a master at cooking monster based foods from within the dungeon, and every episode is them like figuring out the meal they're gonna make so they can keep going.
Interesting.
Very
Okay.
unique. And then last night I started the new Indiana Jones game, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, I think is what it's called. Not a great name,
Cool.
but that's fine. It's so far pretty fun. I like it. It's got sort of no superpower Dishonored vibes. Sort of like mix of stealth, hand to hand combat, and you can like pick up objects in the environment to distract enemies or hit them. So like
Mm.
you can like throw a shovel at a Nazi and hit him in the head. It's awesome.
Who
And
doesn't want to do that?
yeah, I know, right? And then Arcane, I'm watching it again. I just decided to watch the whole show again. I just
Right
recorded
on.
audio for a YouTube video on the latest season, and we'll be doing a podcast on it when we come back in the new year. So excited to talk about that. But what about you? What have you
Yeah.
been up to?
Well, yeah, I've been starting Arcane season 2. It's the quality has not dipped. It is like the same, like
Hmm.
the visuals, the storytelling so far are just excellent still, so it's carrying through. So very excited to talk about that in 2025 with you. Um, I'm also continuing on with my Game of Thrones rewatch, and I just passed a really fun milestone, the Purple Wedding. We got to watch Joffrey die, and
Yeah,
it's so amazing. I could watch that scene a million times. It's
it's
such a
so.
great episode, and
Hmm.
it's still a lot of fun to watch through. But at this point too, where like Danny is finally in Marine, and it's like, okay, she's gonna be in Marine for a while. Gotta buckle up for this.
Yeah,
That I think that part of the show kind of drags a little bit.
that part of the books drags too, though. To be fair.
It does, yeah, it does. When she starts to govern, it's like, okay, this is not as exciting. Um,
Yeah.
Great British Bake Off finished. I'm sorry, Dylan, but you did not win. Because there was a guy on the show named Dylan, so
Oh.
unfortunately, he did not win. But it was a
I was like,
blast.
did I make a bet with you or something? I forgot.
No, I can't remember her name already. Who won? But she was fantastic. She was the first Welsh person to win, which was
Oh.
pretty cool. Um, and last night we watched Women of the Hour, the new Anna Kendrick movie
Mm-hmm.
about the young woman aspiring to be an actress who crosses paths with a serial killer on a dating show in the 1970s, which is actually based on a true story.
Yep.
Um, it is so good. I would
It's
definitely
very
recommend
good. Yeah.
watching it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's so good, and I think the best part about the movie is that it doesn't like it's a it gives you time with a lot of the murders.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the women that the guy killed, you get to kind of learn about them and see
Yeah.
them. Like they get their stories told on screen, and I think that's one of the better parts of the movie. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's really good. It's really good.
Yeah. Well, and that's like the only way they could really make that into a narrative because like the way it happened in real life was like, oh yeah, they matched on the dating show and then they kind of didn't really do anything after that because his vibes were bad. And
Hmm.
they found out later that he was a serial killer. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, yeah. Like, oh, she dodged a bullet.
yeah.
Um, and then I watched for the first time two new movies as well for me. Death at a Funeral, hilarious movie from 2007 with
Okay.
Matthew McFadden, Peter Dinklage, Rupert Graves, Alan Tudyk, like lots of great actors. I
Mm-hmm.
think this is one of the funniest movies I've ever watched. It is amazing. It's
Okay, I'll
so
check it
funny.
out.
It's about this dysfunctional family holding a funeral for like the patriarch, and chaos ensues. It is
Mm-hmm.
so funny. It's a great British comedy.
Okay.
Very very funny. Um, and I also watched Hope and Glory over Thanksgiving break as well. This is a movie from 1988 by John Boorman. It's kind of semi autobiographical, I would say, because it's
Mm-hmm.
about his childhood experiences while growing up in and around London during World War II.
Okay.
So it was like he got to be there kind of like during the bombings of London and like just the general experiences, but like it's not a sad movie. It's actually very like hopeful and
Okay.
happy, and it's like it's not focused on the war so much. It's just kind of like focused on like this little family and how they're getting by
Mm-hmm.
during World War II. It's very touching. I would
Nice.
definitely recommend it if you can find a place to watch it. It was really hard to find it online.
Cool.
um, I don't know why, but that's just kind of. I think we watched it on Tubi or something like that. But
Okay.
that's about it for me lately.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
But all right. Well, that's other stuff. But we thought a
yeah.
new thing we'll start doing. Our last episode of every year. Uh, like what was our favorite thing we covered this year on the show? So,
Hmm.
Miles, you can go first. What was your favorite thing to either favorite thing we covered or favorite thing to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just talking about 2024 here. So just like the episodes we released this year, um, for me, I think it's a split between a few things, but I think Saltburn and Invincible season two were like my favorite things to watch this year
Mm-hmm.
and talk about. I think that they were just really awesome. Um, like Saltburn was just an amazing movie, and I still think about it sometimes. Like the drain scene, I still think about sometimes when I'm driving, and I'm like, "Oh God, why is that coming to me right now?" but it was so good.
Mm-hmm.
And Invincible, like I'm so excited for season three. And I said in the episode that I think this is like a good show to emulate for people who want to adapt written material into a TV show. Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
so faithful, it's so well done, it's so tight in my opinion, and the stakes are so great too. And it just feels very original.
Yep.
But one of my favorite things to discuss this year was the Halo show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to
R.I.P.
discuss, yeah, R.I.P. Halo show,
Mm-hmm.
because it was not good. It was just fun to talk about that with you, Dylan. To
Yeah.
talk about just like all the things that were wrong with it, what
Mm-hmm.
went wrong, and like because you and I we grew up playing Halo, so we're so familiar with the lore and these games.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like when we watch this show, it's just like there were some great things. It was also a huge disappointment in so many
Yeah.
ways.
Well, and I like that discussion too because I like the way we talk about things we didn't like. There's
Yeah.
so many YouTubers and podcasters on here who like their money maker is just being like rage baity shitheads about things
Mm-hmm.
they don't like, often probably saying things they don't genuinely believe because they know they'll get clicks, and we don't do that. We have no interest in doing that. I think
Yeah.
our feedback is like almost always constructive. Maybe we'll take some pot shots here and there, but like we want to like everything. That's like
Yeah.
we spend our time and money to watch this stuff. Like why would we dedicate hours to something we want to hate? You know,
Yeah.
it's pointless.
Exactly. Like we have there's very specific reasons why the Halo show did not work, but yeah, I think
Hmm.
that in general, yeah, we do try to approach our conversations with uh, an optimistic mindset and
Yeah,
constructive feedback, not just saying
hmm
they should have done this. It's more like,
yeah,
oh, I think this could have worked better, or
yeah.
we at least try to do that. But what was your favorite thing that we covered this year, Dylan?
So I am gonna give it to I think Furiosa was my favorite
Mm,
thing we this year. This was a really good year for
yeah,
movies, like quality films and TV. But Furiosa is just so awesome,
it was
and
great.
it's such a great expansion to the Mad Max franchise and the Fury Road saga specifically. It like feels like a kindred spirit to Fury Road, but very much its own thing as
Hmm.
well. Totally different style of film to that. And then I would say like runners up, Challengers and Dune 2. Those were just
Nice.
such pleasures to watch. And Dune 2 in IMAX especially was just fucking phenomenal.
That was a
What
great
an
experience.
incredible, yeah. And the some of the shots in Challengers were just they just like made me smile, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah. Well, and I liked our discussion on Dude, and I would also say Challengers was a very fun discussion too,
Hmm.
because it was like that was such a character driven story, and we were just trying to just like dissect them as much as we could. So that was a fun one to talk
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. I enjoyed like pushing ourselves with the Beast. I think that was a that
Yeah.
was a that was a really challenging episode for us. It was more like of a cerebral movie than we normally cover, but I think
Yes.
like we kind of found the conversation along the way, and that was really enjoyable as well.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I'd recommend all of our listeners, if you have not checked out any of those episodes yet, please do, because they were
Hmm.
fun to talk about and record, and we hope that you enjoy them.
Yeah. But that is going to do it for us this time and do it for us for 2024. Last
Woo!
episode of the year. We'll be back. I mean, I have to leave town for the holidays, so we'll be back as soon as we are back geographically here and not finished Arcane. So sometime early January, we will be back on Wednesdays as usual. Um, Happy holidays,
Yes, happy
you
holidays.
know, stay safe. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. Um, 20, if you're American, 2025 is probably not going to be fun for us. So just
It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough for
hang in
everyone.
there. Hang in there. Look out for yourself. Look out for the people in your community. Stay safe. We'll be there too. But we'll
Hmm.
see you guys there. Niles, until our next episode, where can people find you online?
On Instagram at Niles Got No Styles. What about you, Dylan? Where can people follow you online?
On Instagram at DylanD1026, on Twitter at D-Day Movies, on YouTube at D-Day Movies. I should have a new video out there in the next couple weeks, hopefully, if I can finish it before I go home. And then you can find us both here at Play Pause Rewind, both on YouTube and on your podcast platform of choice, as well as our second channel, Play Pause Rewind videos. All of that is linked down in the description. Thank you so much for watching and listening and supporting us for 100 episodes.
Yeah, thank you.
We will see you guys back here for episode 101.
Ooh,
See you later. Bye.
bye.